So, Bruno, you just received your fifth Oscar nomination for your work on Darkest Hour. There's been many films and television shows made about Winston Churchill in the past. So, when it came to shooting this movie, what were some visual approaches that you and Joe Wright used in order to distinguish it from other films of its ilk?
I think Joe was more interesting, so I was, about the character himself, not the historical kind of moment. So, we discuss about this kind of duality into Churchill's character, him being a guy who wanted to hide but wanted to have power as well. So it was a starting point of our conversation about the whole aesthetic of this movie, like light and shadow, you see. So it was basically based on Churchill's character more than the actual events.
We'll talk a bit about then what your initial ideas were in terms of lighting and color and framing, things like that, in order to put the audience into the world of Winston Churchill.
So based on this idea that there was a duality in this character, so we kind of decided that just to play with it, and so we kind of discussed the scene and said, okay, this scene could be very dark and we barely see him, and then the other scene could be him walking into a beam of light. So it was, and being totally lit. So if you take, for example, the very beginning of the movie where Hatley he's talking to Chamberlain, and we see Churchill's ball hat. So I decided not to light the hat, and then we discovered Churchill's in the following scene in his bedroom, and he's lit by the matches of his cigar. So that's how he starts. So it's kind of a character coming into light, and then the opposition was, as his last speeches, which concludes the movie, was about him being in total light, so he's not able to hide anymore. So it was kind of the actual basic idea we developed.
Mm-hmm. How did you work with the heads of department, production design, costumes, and people like that in order to come up with a consistent visual style for the movie?
Oh, I mean, I always work with the production designer and the costume designer as much as I can. I say that my best friend on a film crew is a production designer. So Sarah Greenwood, who did it, did a fantastic job, and she made all the researches. I didn't do any researches in terms of aesthetic and in terms of what London was in the 40s, because I was not really interested in it. It didn't make much sense for me. So I trusted her in terms of finding the right wallpaper, the right design. And second of all, I'm not English, as you know, so I didn't know London as much. So we worked really closely, and then there was a technical approach, just asking her just to open seatings and stuff like that on the set we built. So, but basically, the whole look of it is coming from her more than me.
Mm-hmm. And in this film,
the same with the costume, so you have all those guys wearing black and tweeds and all those kind of things. So I cannot say, I disagree, why aren't they wearing this kind of color when they actually were not? So I followed what they gave me, and I trusted them.
Well, with this film in particular, so much of it takes place indoors. Not just in Churchill's home, but also in the war room. I mean, a lot of the big action of the movie takes place as he's trying to figure out strategically what to do, and we're indoors with him as he's planning this stuff out. So how did you play around with space and things like that in your work?
I think there was first of all, the war room is kind of a replica. I mean, not totally, of the actual war room, which is a museum now in London. So Sarah kind of followed the aspect of it, which was, very narrow corridors, very narrow room. And so I thought it was interesting to play with the fact that it was really contained and very, very narrow and dimly lit. And and it goes with the idea we had with the contrast as well, because so the war room is less contrast and less lit than Buckingham Palace, for example, which is totally sunlit, even if it's dark. So it was creating this kind of variation on a theme like that, like a musical score, where we played with big shaft of light and then dimmed location or dimmed space. So it was always trying to find just really like a musical score. So it was an opposition between two kind of rhythm in the light.
And also in the film, you have to create this kind of tension leading up to Churchill figuring out what to do, and him asserting himself basically as the leader of the party. I mean, can you talk about how visually you created tension within the movie?
In fact, visually, I don't think I did. I mean, it's more about the acting and the blocking from Joe Wright, So, and I worked closely with him, and so we discussed scene, and there was obviously some thing where, for example, in the war cabinet, the war rooms, there was a scene which was probably 10 minutes long. So we needed to find an opposition to this, something to breathe a little bit, because otherwise it would have been totally claustrophobic. But it was claustrophobic as a nature of the script in some ways. I mean, that's where all those decisions were made. And that's the historical kind of thing. So, but our question was, how can we create a drama with close-up and people talking to each other, sitting around a table? But it worked because we were moving the camera on the other scene. So it was kind of a balance like that, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
There's also a lot of interesting kind of expressionistic shots, shall we say, ways that you visually represent things in an interesting way. Can you talk about some of those?
I kind of see the shots you mentioned, but they are coming from Joe, and I always work for a director. So, and then Joe, like Tim Burton or the kinds who I worked with, they have very strong vision, and I try to follow them. So for example, the shot where the colonel, what is his name? So it's in Calais, where he's walking in the rain, and then the camera goes up. It was Joe's decision. It was Joe's vision, and my goal was to accomplish it technically. So I think working with Joe Wright was about to understand this kind of operatic vision he had about this movie, and try to complement it, and not fighting against it, and trying to support it as much as I could. So giving all the ideas, but those very operatic shots are coming from Joe.
Speaking of which, I think this is your first time working with Joe Wright. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So, I mean, when working with somebody for the very first time, I mean, how do you figure out that kind of working rhythm?
Oh, I asked to meet with the director I work with, beforehand. So, and just even to be sure that I want to do the music, So, in fact, what happened was, when Joe asked me to do it, he sent me the script, and I said, I'm not sure, because it's there is a lot of people talking, and I'm not the best one for those kind of things. So but let's meet. And he came to Paris, and we spent a full day together, and we came with different ideas. We share our vision of the movie, and I found that he had a very interesting approach to it. But so it's always like that, when you meet the director you never worked with, you have to find a way to communicate and just to understand what you can give, So, and it's not about doing your movie and said, oh yeah, that's my movie. I don't listen to the director. See, it's not like that. It's just more about collaborating and again, I'm fortunate working with directors who have a very strong vision. So I try to support it as much as I can.
This is your 5th Oscar nomination. You were previously nominated for Amélie, Very Long Engagement, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and Inside Llewyn Davis. Can you talk a bit about what that recognition has meant for you in your career?
I don't know. It's very important. I mean, I can't complain. I'm I'm one of the lucky one. How can I say? First, the nomination is coming from your peers, so it's a cinematographer's branch who is voting for you. So it's it's great to be recognized by your peers. So, and then the Oscar itself is just a vote, and you can lose, and I always lost so far. But I'm happy like that. I mean, it's it's great. It's and being with Roger Deakins, that would be the 3rd time I will be with Roger, and he's a legend, and I'm really honored to be with him and with Rachel Morrison and Dan Loston and Oita. So those are great cinematographers, and what I like is we are so 5 of us, and it has always been like that. We have very different style, and that's great. It's that's what I like about it.
Mm-hmm. Before we go, you mentioned working with the Coen brothers, and I did want to bring up what's next on your docket is their Netflix series, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Can you tell us anything about that?
Not really. I can't. I cannot. So it's I won't discuss it.
Well, I tried.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Well, Bruno, thank you so much, and congratulations again on the nomination. Appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Okay, bye.